Welcome to BuildWise, the podcast where construction meets wisdom. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the construction industry. We're going to share insightful tips and dive into the latest trends. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey in construction, BuildWise is your go-to source for valuable insights. Let's build a smarter, wiser future together. Like and subscribe now. Stay tuned for a foundation of knowledge in every episode. Daughter's over there telling me to smile more. It's hard to talk and smile like that. I mean, politicians can do it.
Well, they have training.
They can lie to you and smile. They can talk to you and smile.
Their lips are moving. They're lying.
Oh, boy.
Okay, well, so today we're going to be discussing commercial construction. We have discussed, in brief, some residential construction and the differences to commercial. So let's dive into the commercial side of things a little bit. And again, it's just going to touch on it. We will get into more topics regarding commercial construction in greater detail.
Let's go to commercial.
Okay, so for our viewers, can you please tell us what commercial construction really entails? Is that restaurants? Are they schools, or is that something different? So give a very clear understanding to the audience.
Well, it's like commercial construction is a broad stroke of a lot of things. So what a school would be like educational, but it's kind of on the commercial side, right? So it's ran more commercially. I kind of view it more as like how's it ran? You know, one's ran more commercially, with all the protocols and very regime kind of step-by-step process with everything. And there's always a process to handle just about everything. And so, I kind of even consider apartments are residential, but it's more of a commercial project. So,
right.
I kind of consider, in fact, I was just entering a set of apartments into our system and I labeled it commercial.
Yeah.
But because it's pretty much commercial until it's turned over and rented out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but yeah, restaurants, buildings. So now you can have, a developer and a big contractor develop a shell, which would be like a whole big row of buildings.
Yeah.
And then you come back and then each tenant leases out a space. And then each tenant will improve the space.
Yeah, customize it.
That'll be called a TI or a tenant improvement. And so, but that's all commercial work. And that tenant improvement could be a salon, a spa, a restaurant, retail outlet. It could be really just about anything.
Yeah. And so how many restaurants have you built?
Yeah, we went over that one before. I can't even count them.
Too many to count, huh? That's how old you are.
Yeah, true. That was my thing for a long time, was building restaurants.
Yeah. Well, you started out with Denny's and then done a million McDonald's.
Yeah, no, I started off with, we were doing Taco Bell's.
Oh. A lot of plumbing issues with that?
Chuck E. Cheese. What's that?
I said, with Taco Bell, I said, are there a lot of plumbing issues with that? It's a joke. Oh, I went over your head.
It didn't go over very well.
Well, I'm sure people that are listening will understand the joke. I'll explain it to you later.
Kind of like eating gas there, or what?
Well, it causes so many stomach issues, so it backs up people's toilets.
That's not that funny.
It is funny if you got it.
No, I didn't get it.
Everybody else, you're laughing. You're laughing.
Anyways, Taco Bell's. We got Chuck E. Cheese's. We took the old Sambos and turned them into Caros.
Never even heard of either one of those.
I know they're all gone. I don't know if there's any more Caros anymore, but and then we just did a lot. And Denny's, I did 275 Denny's remodels across the United States. I've worked at Northrop Grumman, where they built the first stealth bomber.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that was pretty unique. Had to have clearance. And then
That wasn't that funny.
that was funny, your Taco Bell joke. And then, anyways, and then, but yeah, we did. I mean, Carl's Jr.'s, McDonald's. There probably isn't a McDonald's in Southern California I haven't built or touched. I say that a lot, but that was kind of a unique time. We had contracts that just poured in, and they'd literally back a UPS truck up at the beginning of the year and dump off like 15 sets of drawings and say, these are your jobs.
Yeah.
And so
You've also built specialty restaurants or just more custom restaurants like Gulliver's and Canyon Lounge. Are those any different when you build them than, your standard McDonald's or Taco Bell?
yeah, because those are one-offs. So, they're somebody said, hey, I want a restaurant. So they come to us and we build the restaurant. And so we would take care of the plans, and there's no specs for it. We have to create those, right?
Right.
So the difference between like that and say a McDonald's or a Carl's Jr. is they come with this pretty much proven model of plans that they've honed over the years, and it's usually the same floor plan, the same footprint, and all this other stuff. And they got a set of specs, and they've just done so many, it's just gotten very regime, and everyone knows how things go. When you do a one-off, I mean, they're having to pick equipment. We're having to find equipment manufacturers. We're having to custom make the equipment. When you got a McDonald's or a Carl's Jr. that they've got the same footprint, they make that same piece of stainless sink and countertop the same way every single time.
Yeah.
It's totally different.
Yep. Sounds like it. Okay. So within the industry, my hair keeps sticking to this one. Push this a little bit. Sorry, guys. So what are some things that tend to be overlooked in commercial construction?
Each one's different. I mean, it's, being a proactive, commercial construction, you really got to have a superintendent that's on their toes. You got to have somebody that's really, one, knows how to read plans, has read them.
Yeah.
Knows how to read specs, has read them.
Yeah.
Knows how to do submittals and read them. Knows how to compare specs and submittals and everything against the plans. Knows how to write good RFIs. All these things, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have that type of person and they're more of a reactionary kind of superintendent, you're going to end up with a lot of things getting overlooked.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you are costing the project time and money, and can be putting people in danger. We had a project that had a 2-story building on it. It was in Temecula, and the subcontractor came to me and said, "Hey, there's a 1.5-inch bow in the floor," and I was like, that can't be, And so I said, all right, well, show me. So he gets a big straight edge out and he shows me. And I start looking around, and I'm looking at the structure. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at that. I go back to I told everyone to get out of the building. I said, let me just check some things. So went back, looked at the plans, looked at the structural calcs, looked at all these different things that went into the building. And we were just framed. We weren't even fully loaded yet. So I called the structural engineer, and I'm like, hey, there's a problem here. And he looks at it. He goes, who are you? And I said, I'm the superintendent. He's like, just the superintendent, huh? I said, yeah, just
I'm Dan the man. Excuse me.
And I had the owners with me, and I said, yeah, I'm just the superintendent. Well, anyways, what ended up happening was they got a second opinion, and they ended up finding out that the engineer had used the wrong multiplier for that structural section.
Okay.
And so we had to go back and add I-beams and some steel supports. But my point about all that is and we weren't fully loaded. If we would have fully loaded that building with HVAC equipment, roof, flooring, people walking around in there, it could have been catastrophic.
Yeah.
So if you're not taking your job as a superintendent serious, you need to, because lives are at stake and people, and that happens more often than you think. And then when something bad happens and everyone's scrambling, it's better to stop the job, take a moment, because it ended up it's saving us time in the long run. If that would have stopped the whole job. I
Yeah.
mean, that would have not just stopped that one building, it would have stopped the whole project.
Well, one of my questions that I was going to get into is how important is the attention to detail. Not just, I think a lot of times people think of attention to detail comes down to the aesthetics, but it gets very much into from beginning to end the structural and all those details. So, like you just shared, if you had not paid attention to that detail, that thing that was going, wrong, it could have caused a lot of damage and a lot of harm.
Yeah, and then you get into, and if you don't pay attention to details, and if you don't pay attention to your paperwork, so like let's just use for instance, you're starting a big job ground up, and some guy's got a set of drawings, and he's going along with the architectural foundation page, and oh yeah, footing says this, footing says that, and then you're like, yeah, well, what does the structural say?
Right.
And
Yeah.
what does the soils engineering report say? Because the soils engineering report is going to give you recommendations. Did it just rain? Do we have to have that rechecked? Soils engineer comes out, we'll check. I always have them check bottom of footing, and just to make sure we're compacted. And sometimes that's a requirement. Not all the time is it. Like on our houses, I've had that on two or three of them. I can't remember which one I did, but we just double check them, right? And so there's a whole litany of things that all comes down to being detailed. So when you look and compare all those, and then at the end of the day, if everything matches, then great. But if not everything matches, then you got to go and research which one's the more stringent, which one's the more the best for that situation, and which one is everyone okay with. And so that happens through RFIs, which the RFIs gets shot out to, probably on something like that would probably go to the architect, and then it would go off to the structural engineer and off to the soils engineer and get a consensus, right? And then also probably to the structural engineer, so that now he can, depending on what the loadings are and everything, make sure everything else is right. And then, so.
Well, you mentioned two things in there that I actually wanted to cover, but one of them was soils report.
Yeah.
What is that? Let everybody know what that is and how important that is.
Well, on big jobs, it's going to be, it's a whole pre-report. And so what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll do borings, and they'll bore down, and they're going to find groundwater or not. Mm-hmm. They're going to find out what type of material it is. And usually you'll have sediment layers, you'll have different layers of material. So it's not, when you dig a hole, it's not just this kind of material. It can change all the way down from, clay, sand, all these different things. And you got to know what you're building on top of. And then the soils report is going to it's basically going to identify what's there. And then they're going to identify how to handle it structurally, right? So they'll do traffic indexes. So they'll tell you what your asphalt and concrete section should be. They're going to tell you what your underlayment, your gravel and everything should be. They're going to talk to you about, you got to have some drainage, or you got to over excavate all of it and bring in better material. I mean, it's just depends,
How often does that happen?
What?
Bringing in different types of material for better support. Is that more common or not as common?
It happens here and there, and it doesn't always happen. Like, you could have a site and you could have everything perfect over here, no big deal, and then you run into a sandy bad spot.
Yeah.
And then you got to determine how to handle that. And so usually on the bigger jobs commercially, the soils engineering report, you'll have actually a soils engineer on site while grading.
Okay.
So as you're grading and over excavating, so like let's just say your soils report says you need to over excavate 2 foot beyond bottom of footing, right? Mm-hmm. while you're excavating that pad, the soils engineer is going to be there, one, to make sure that you are going past the 2 feet. And if you run into a clay area or sandy area or whatever, they're going to give you recommendations at that point based on what they saw. So they'll do a structural observation. You'll get a structural observation report. They'll write up what they saw and how to handle it. Sometimes they can do it on the spot. Sometimes they have to get with the main engineer and try to figure it out. And then they'll just say, hey, you need to go down another foot. Or let's go down another 2 feet. You're going to have to bring in more base. Or bring it back, air it out, and then bring it back in and recompact it in lifts.
Okay. Sounds like there's a lot of very unexpected things that could happen when doing the grading. How do you bid on that?
Very carefully. So, when you bid like when you're bidding per soils report and per plan, right? This stuff's in there. It tells you what you need to do. But your bid also should state that basically, it does usually state unforeseen conditions, right?
Right.
So if you're excavating and your soils report says this and that's what you did, and then the soils engineer says, no, we need to go down another 2 or 3 feet. And then you do, that's unforeseen. We built a McDonald's on top of a earthquake fault.
Okay.
It didn't actually get built on top. I'm going to need to rephrase that. So when we're excavating, one of the excavators who had been doing it a long time in this mountainous area, he picked up a piece of dirt and said, hey, that looks like an earthquake fault. And I was like, shut up, get out of here, man. I go, don't say stuff like that. Sure enough, it was an earthquake fault. So everyone was up in arms. Everyone was upset. Thought soils engineering company had missed, a mapped earthquake fault. Well, come to find out, and it stopped the job. So come to find out, it was unmapped. It was something new that we found.
Wow. And
so, we were just excavating a normal foundation for this McDonald's, right? And then next thing you know, now we're over excavating. Now we've got a soils engineer standing over our shoulder, and we're digging past this layer, past. We had to get a variance to move the McDonald's closer to the fault line. We had to date the dirt. We had to call in a national and state geologist to date the dirt and to do their carbon thing, whatever they do, and find out if it was active or inactive. And if it was inactive, we can get a variance to go closer. If it was active, it probably would have killed the project. So it was inactive, and but that soils layer became, 8 feet that we had to over excavate, put in, and then also as we got deeper, we had an underground spring. You can't make this stuff up.
Oh wow!
So we had this water perking up out of the ground, and so then we had to devise another thing. So all that's unforeseen, right? So but to this day, that McDonald's is there, and there's water trickling out of that underground spring out from underneath that building that's on top of that spring, and with the variance of being off the earthquake fault.
So if you discovered the earthquake fault, then is it called Dan's fault?
It wasn't my fault. I had no fault insurance.
Whatever. I think that we need to go back and rename it.
I know,
fault,
right?
Because everything's your fault.
It feels like it sometimes. I wanted to put a little jagged line through the playland to identify the fault, and they tell me no.
Oh, that's such a McDonald's, just a joy kill.
I know.
Okay, so then with weather, because that's also such a factor, and you've built in so many different states, there's probably wasn't as many issues as Southern California versus Florida or here. What has been the biggest challenge as far as weather goes for you with building? Does it set back projects a lot or not as much?
Oh, it can ruin projects. I know of several that, they And the forecast doesn't look like it's that bad when you start breaking ground and you over excavate a site. And then on that job in Temecula, I can't remember how many millions of gallons of water that we had on that site. Yeah,
Wow.
it was insane. And we started grading, and it just rained and rained and rained.
In Southern California.
And then it would stop for a little while, and we'd dry it out. We start excavating again, and then it would rain and rain. And it was frustrating to the owners because they're all, popping in like, well, can't you do this? Can't you do that? And then I did a diagram that I did the math on how many inches of rain we had and the acreage. And then the math was basically it was a football field with end zones. I think it was 20 foot deep of water or something like that as how much water was on that site.
That's insane.
Yeah. And so it can really ruin things. When you're working next to the ocean, you got to worry about the tides.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I can't tell you the first footing I dug in Newport Beach, it's like I come back, oh my gosh, it's full of water. I come back 4 hours later, it's, dry. And so we had to time our concrete pours
Oh, that's so
with
crazy.
the tides.
So then you got to be a weatherman too, huh?
Right. So, but yeah, I mean, so you got those kind of conditions, you got weather conditions. I mean, and you got to pay attention to them. It can really, we had McDonald's in Huntington Beach. We did 2 of them, and we're almost done. We're trying to get the lot paved, and the ground was just so wet. So we asked Soul's engineer for some recommendations, and basically we mixed in a bunch of lime and something else. I can't remember what it was, and it tightened it up really good where we can get a compaction out of it. And then they're still there to this day. And we built those 2 in 9 weeks, both of them at the same time.
Dirt to burgers.
Dirt to burgers.
And then what about snow? Because I know here in Idaho, obviously we got weather like snow. And does that or has that really affected many of your projects, at least yet?
So weather here, it affects them. It's not usually very dramatic. It's a nuisance.
Yeah.
So, we, on this one project we just put in all the insulation it was a slab floor, and we put in all the insulation and everything. And out of the blue, we got these 50-mile-an-hour winds, just blew it all out. Had to completely redo all of it. And then, so it was just, challenges like that. And then, the guys are getting ready to do the underground plumbing, and it snows, pretty much they just have to wait for it to, but fortunately around here, it comes and goes pretty quick.
Yeah. Unless you get a snowpocalypse.
We had to, tried to put some trusses on the walls, and the crane company couldn't come in. It was too muddy. It's just those kind of things just stall stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you can really mess with Mother Nature.
No.
Okay, well, we have time for one more question. I feel like this is definitely a topic we're going to have to really delve in a lot deeper to. But which type of commercial projects are fun for you?
The ones like the ones in my history that were extremely challenging. I don't know why, because that just means more work for me. But it was probably those types of projects, those ones that they say can't be done, or you're never going to be able to pull this off. Some of those have been pretty challenging and difficult. Like I wasn't sure I could pull them off or not. Like, I did that Cartier diamond store in Florida.
Yeah.
And the whole mall had bets that we weren't going to be able to finish on time.
But you did. So
I was out there drinking a cup of coffee, and it was all done. And the guy walked up with his jaw dropped, and he's like, "How'd you do it?"
I told you I was going to do it.
I was up for 3 days straight trying to finish that job.
Wow.
I had 60 people in that little tiny space.
I never saw that space, so I can't reference it, but I can imagine, a diamond store's not super big, but that's funny.
4,500 square feet. put the
So-
safe in there. And,
I'd assume the more challenging ones are a bigger, the reward after is much bigger.
I think you're right. I really don't know why they're my more fun
Funner.
ones, funner. But I think they because of the challenge, the risk and reward kind of thing. I think taking a chaotic project and orchestrating, even like on that diamond store, we had some challenges because the architect was out of New York and we were in Florida, and the mall engineer, so we have our own engineer that's in a different state, and then we have a mall engineer, and everything has to get passed through all that stuff. And everyone had their own opinion, and so I actually called a meeting and got them all there. We got a consensus on how we'd handle it, who I would rifle stuff off to, and we finally started getting the answers, and we finally started getting stuff done. And we had some really bad details on the plans. In general, they were pretty decent plans, but they have such custom lighting and such custom stuff. It's the details just weren't detailed enough.
Yeah.
And so you had to just go way beyond that and understand the equipment and all the material, all the finished carpentry package came from Italy.
Oh wow.
And then
Yeah,
they had 7 Italians come, and they were the installers, and they didn't speak a lick of English. And so that was comical. You should have seen all this.
Yeah, but now you can just pick up a phone and translate.
I know we
and
couldn't
forth
back
to each
then,
other.
but it was pretty comical, but we had a good time and we got it done, and they were professionals. I mean, they were such good carpenters, and they made great coffee.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
You should have had them make pizza.
They had these little espresso cups, and at 10 o'clock, I always was just excited. I think I got addicted. It was
I'm sure.
It was like this little cup about yay big, and it was so strong, and you can almost stand a spoon up in it.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right, well, we have time for your final thoughts. So why don't you just conclude with, your idea on construction and how, if anybody that's listening is new to commercial construction or is tapping into it, what's your best piece of advice?
All right, well, commercial construction, depending on what part you're getting into, is different advice. If you're going to be a superintendent or project manager in commercial construction, you got to really know what you're doing, and you got to dive into those details. And whenever you go into a meeting, if you're running that job, you should know more than anybody else on that table. It's really important that you have the ultimate knowledge on that project from beginning to end. And you don't get that because you're just going to be doing book work and doing all this stuff all night long. You do it by tapping your subs. So I have a saying that as a general contractor, I have general knowledge. Each sub has specific knowledge, and whoever my trusted sources are for subcontractors, I really tap that knowledge, and I find out, like, if I have a question on plumbing and electrical or civil, I hit them up, and then I put 2 and 2 together, and then I devise the plan, and then we execute it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time and your knowledge. We are going to be diving further in, like I said earlier, to just really expanding this topic because there is so much information, and we can literally just go into soils reports and on its own and whatnot. So let us know if you have any questions or if there's anything that you are really wanting to know specifically regarding commercial construction, and we will definitely open that up and discuss it.
So thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please like this channel, subscribe, share it. Get that out there. Put in the comments any things you'd want to see further on this subject. The superintending and assistant superintendent and all that stuff, that can be a whole several episodes, and then and then anything else that you pick. You know, we can get into shop drawings and details and specs and Soles reports and everything else. And we will also be interviewing some of those people. So put the comments in there, and we will try to start picking those out and trying to dive into those. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.